Hey there. Welcome to the show. It's The Hash on CoinDesk TV. I'm Zach Seward. I'm joined today by Will Foxley, Jen Sanasi, and Naomi Brockwell. We're talking about nodes and stuff behind the scenes, and it is a beautiful thing. Naomi, let's start this thing off with some talk of the SEC. What's up?
Talking about the SEC, there's also some live hearings going on right now about stable coins, but let's dive into all the controversy with the SEC right now. So Hester Peirce, crypto mom, we love her. She tweeted out yesterday, she says the latest regulatory agenda shows that the SEC will be busy in the upcoming months, but it won't be working on the right things. She put together this document with Commissioner Elad L. Roisman. The two of them ripped into Gensler's plans for the SEC. It starts out saying that while Gary Gensler's new released regulatory agenda is ambitious in scope, we are disappointed with its content. And she just kind of dives into why it's so disappointing, basically saying that they're no longer fostering innovation, that they're shutting down a bunch of things that were only just put into effect, like, over a matter of months, saying that businesses haven't yet been able to reap the benefits of these things, saying that there's absolutely no justification for changing laws that have only just come into effect because we don't even have any data on how they're actually going. So how could we revise something if we actually can't assess that? It's a really interesting dig and an interesting kind of peek under the curtain as to how the SEC operates, because it's very clear that Gensler has a very different idea of what the SEC's purview is than Hester Peirce. She has always been in the camp that, we should be fostering innovation, we should be protecting consumers, and we shouldn't be trying to shoehorn crypto into any archaic rules. This is an opportunity to revise and innovate and update our outdated ideas of these laws. And she basically says in here that we're doing the exact opposite of that currently. And there's no protection. There's like she's basically asking, what is the SEC doing? It's a really interesting exploration of the SEC. I'm going to throw this to the group for your thoughts. Zach, what did you think about all of this and what's going on at the SEC right now?
I think it's interesting that Hester is really doubling down on her dissent with current leadership. This is not the first time we've seen her sort of speak out about her misgivings about sort of the current course of action in the Gensler SEC. So to me, it's interesting that we have this dissenting wing that is sort of putting out these statements. Maybe just as like a tease that something maybe better might be out there, but it's interesting that I don't know. There's a lot of sort of internal politics going on within this commission, and I think it's interesting to see these statements get out there in the public. And you just got to wonder what the internal politics are and what sort of pushback is being made behind the scenes that shapes public policy that's actually issued beyond these statements that are issued with kind of regularity, with a bit of regularity from Hester and a couple of other commissioners, depending on the topic. So interesting to see this going on, and I think there's just a lot of curiosity in DC and beyond about how much the SEC wants to take command of this crypto thing and how much they want to sort of set the rules of the road. So there's a lot of intrigue going on, a lot of palace intrigue, but for me, that's what this is all about. I think I saw Jen, so I'm going to toss it up to her.
Yeah, I think the SEC wants to take the reins, but in this statement, it's very clear that they're not putting one foot in front of the other when it comes to taking the reins. I just want to read an excerpt from it. Commissioner Peirce said, the agenda makes no mention of any regulation with respect to digital assets. It goes on to say that the agenda, through its silence on crypto, signals that the market can expect continued questions around the application of our securities laws to this area of increasing investor interest. And all year we've been talking about, regulation is not bad for the space. If we have some clear rules, we can then move forward with, are we going to fight against these rules? Are we going to comply to these rules? Do these rules make sense? And this just says that there are no rules and we're going to continue with this ambiguity around it. And I think that it's just going to get more frustrating for industry operators.
Yeah, I'll jump in there really quick, just to kind of add to what you're saying, Jen. I think it is interesting to see like the palace intrigue, like you're saying, Zach, like what's going on behind the doors is probably a lot more contentious than just a blog post on the SEC website. Like I don't know anyone else who has the ability to write a slam piece on their quote unquote boss, but Hester Peirce apparently does have the ability to do that just with how the SEC is set up. So I think this also kind of points to what's going to happen over the next 5-10 years. This seems to become a more partisan issue day by day, which I don't think anyone in crypto really wanted that to happen. Nobody wanted this to be R's versus D's kind of thing. They wanted everyone to kind of get on the bandwagon for digital assets. And that's also what's happening. Like Gary Gensler is firmly an appointee by Biden. Hester Peirce, I believe, was appointed by Trump. And now we're kind of seeing that play out here with the two sides kind of bickering at each other over a blog post. But I'm sure behind the scenes, this is a lot more contentious than just this very well-articulated argument here. Naomi, I'll throw it to you for closing thoughts, though.
Yeah, I just want to go up to the intro of this where she kind of summarizes the points that she'd made. She just says the agenda is brimming with plans to redo recently completed rules, to add new regulatory obligations and constrain investor choice. And I think that last part is really important because the SEC does a lot of that. It's all about constraining consumer choice. I mean, there are different ways you could regulate an industry in order to protect consumers. One of them is to make sure that there's transparency and there's correct disclosures and that companies are doing the right thing. And if there is opacity in the company, i.e. if it's not DeFi and completely transparent on a blockchain, you want to know that, you know, what's going on inside the company is actually legit and they're being honest and disclosing what's going on. And instead, the SEC is doing the other route, which is basically just constraining consumer choice. It's basically saying, oh, we're not going to change anything about opacity or anything that. We're just going to say you're not allowed to invest in these things because they may or may not be opaque. They may or may not have your best interests at heart. It's just a really disappointing avenue that they're taking. It is pushing innovation offshore. It is shutting down a lot of opportunities in the country. So good on Hester Peirce for bringing this up and for fighting the good fight. She's always been such a bastion of rational thought inside the SEC. So I hope that she continues and maybe has some success in pushing back. But let's change topic here. And Zach, lots of interesting things going on. First of all, some big numbers.
Some big numbers. I think we have seen the first $1 billion funding round in the crypto industry. Big raise from NYDIG, which is an institutional Bitcoin broker, but also comes with big plans, big ambitions. And I think that's interesting. Ian Allison was able to talk to NYDIG's chief innovation officer this morning, and they sketched out a vision for where NYDIG is going. To date, NYDIG has sort of been a behind-the-scenes player. Now they want to be behind the scenes, but in a big way, behind everyone from hospitality brands offering Bitcoin reward points to your local bank offering Bitcoin buy, sell, and trade services. So a $1 billion funding round that valued this player at $7 billion, not the biggest valuation that we've seen in the crypto industry. Recall that FTX was valued at $18 billion and its $900 million funding round earlier this year. But $1 billion for this company is pretty crazy. And I think the CIO, at least, was pretty compelling at sketching out a vision for why this investment might make sense for some of these investors. I'm going to throw this to Will. I mean, I think NYDIG, again, they've been a little bit a little bit hard to pin down on what it is that they're envisioning for themselves in the future. But now we're kind of having a bit of a moment to understand, oh, got it. They see this as an opportunity for consumers as well as for Wall Street. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Totally. I think they have been really hard to pin down. And that's because the thing they do, most people are not interested in. And that's like behind the scenes infrastructure for banking. What they're doing is going around to different banks around the US, and they've integrated Bitcoin into the backend infrastructure so that, you know, your normal bank can take Bitcoin in a way that it's never been able to do before. And it's a pretty innovative approach. We've seen a lot of people like the Coinbases of the world try to do, hey, we're going to build a marketplace. Come buy Bitcoin from us directly. Your consumer, unload your ID, put all your banking information in there, and we'll make you a wallet. You can buy Bitcoin this way. NYDIG's taking the other side saying, hey, banks, come to us. We'll give you the ability so people can buy Bitcoin through you. And then we just have all-in-one TradFi shop with a Bitcoin element kind of plugged into it. And it's pretty smart and it's working. And I think this rollout here just kind of solidifies that the model has worked over the last 2 years. NYDIG wasn't really a name that most people knew about 2 years ago. Most people know about it now. And I think this $1 billion raise and the market cap or whatever that they have shows that they really mean business. And with the integrations that you're talking about, Zach, it's only going to solidify their movement. I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just to think of Bitcoin in any business, according to their CEO, and to do that, they have to leverage some of these technical innovations of the Bitcoin blockchain itself. We're talking about Taproot, we're talking about Lightning payments. That's something that they mentioned in their announcement this morning. I'm going to throw it straight to Naomi. On the payments front, when we're looking sort of the back end systems that could make this possible, could make this part of every business in America. What are the technical the challenges that they need to account for?
Oh gosh, that's a deep question. But to dive into, this comment that he made saying to potentially expand Bitcoin's reach into any industry, I just love that so much because there are technical challenges. You have a specialist in the industry focusing on that and just making it interoperable with any business so that not everyone has to become an expert in crypto. I think that's kind of awesome. But also, this is what crypto is meant for. Crypto isn't meant to be this isolated financial tool that's just some speculation device that is isolated in just the finance industry. This is something that's pervasive. Like money is pervasive in our lives and everything we do. We need money as a way to transfer value from the fruits of our labor, into things that we want to exchange it for, specialization of skill set and all of that. And so it's like, it's pervasive. If we want crypto to be pervasive as well, if we want Bitcoin, to become a substitute for fiat sovereign currency, government money, then we're going to need it everywhere. We're going to need all businesses interacting with it. But as we know, talking on this show, there's a high barrier to entry for getting involved with this stuff. You kind of really need to be interested in it to have the bandwidth to dig in and kind of wrap your head around it because it's complicated and it takes all of us a long time to get it. And not everyone just has that time. They're focusing on their own industry and they should be focusing on being specialists in their own industry. So now it's interesting that we have companies that are saying, listen, we are going to lay the pipes down and everyone can use them. So I like that they're providing that specialist side of things for any industry to plug into. And that's exactly the direction that we want to be going into. But Zach, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, I think that's a nice segue. We're going to change gears here. So meanwhile, as we're talking about Bitcoin being integrated into every business, we have Elon Musk out here saying Bitcoin rules, Dogecoin rules for payments. That's what
if
Elon
he had
Musk
literally said that,
today.
I believe you.
I would love it.
He said,
true.
That'd be pretty good, actually. That'd be pretty good. Yeah, no. So he said, hey, this Doge stuff, we're going to try to roll Doge into merchandise. You can pay for Tesla merchandise with Doge. This obviously sent Doge spiking. There's a very steep little candle right after this tweet went out. I think it was up about 33% right after this one. I'm not sure where it is now, but the man that we talked about yesterday, being able to move markets with tweets, who was named Time's most influential of the year, is at it again with Doge on the payments front. I'm going to throw it straight to Jen for her thoughts on this.
Love Elon. After yesterday, I don't want to skirt over the quote at the end of the article from Musk. He said that he doubts crypto will replace fiat currency. And it just made me chuckle because he sees this world where we're living on Mars. He's this absolute visionary and still he thinks that crypto is not going to replace fiat. And I wonder if that just speaks to the regulatory concerns that we talk about. Like, he just can't imagine a world where we get around these regulatory woos and the stronghold that the government has on us. I thought that was really interesting. But coming back to the Tesla merch, what kind of merch does Tesla sell? And what can I purchase from them with Doge? Because it's not actually the vehicles, right?
To my understanding, it's not the vehicles, but it's probably like mugs and like shirts and like other things that Elon Musk
mini vehicles.
Mini vehicles,
like
yes, mini vehicles. Yeah.
The whistle.
I love that. I mean, their Bitcoin payments weren't around for a long time, right?
No, that was a brief experiment. I mean, does Naomi, do the history of accepting Bitcoin for Teslas.
Give us a history lesson.
It was real
on, Naomi, let's hear
quick.
it.
So back in early day, like 2014, there was a random dealership, I think in LA or somewhere on the West Coast, that was like, we're going to accept
Newport
it.
Beach.
And that was there was kind of the one instance of it kind of happening. And then obviously blocks got filled up. Everyone stopped using it, day-to-day transactions, and merchant activity kind of died. And then Musk came along and was like, well, I will reinvigorate it, and said that he would accept it. for purchases, for Tesla purchases. And this lasted maybe like couple of months until he turned around the same time that he was looking to get a new contract like with the EPA and said, actually, it could be bad for the environment, but I will reconsider if we can, make Bitcoin more focused on renewable energy. So they stopped accepting Bitcoin. He said he'd keep an eye on it. And meanwhile, the entire industry started shifting over to renewable energy. That's the power of Elon Musk, guys. Single-handedly somehow convinced China to shut down so that everything moved to North America. That's not actually what happened. And so it's just interesting to see that go on. And now he's like, Dogecoin, we're also going to accept this. I mean, I totally agree with you, Jen, because I love Elon. He's awesome. And I read that sentence too, like that he doubts that crypto will replace fiat money. And I'm like,
but we'll live on Mars.
The most, visionary man in the world. Like, your cars will drive themselves and we're going to implant computers in your head, but we're still going to run everything with government money because I can't think of any way to optimize that system. So it's just very interesting. But maybe he's talking less about optimization and more about what the market will accept, which may be an interesting insight. I'm not going to completely throw it out. He could just be saying, like, you need network effect for this stuff, and maybe government kind of has a stranglehold, and as long as they have a monopoly on violence, then they can enforce whatever they want, right? So it is interesting to kind of dive into that. But I will say that because I do hold Elon in such high esteem, and I don't hold Dogecoin in such high esteem, and yet Elon's there saying, listen, I'm going to give you ways to optimize this system, kind of makes me more bullish on Dogecoin, to be honest. Like, if Elon's digging into this and figuring out how to optimize it, I mean, he's probably going to do stuff to improve it. I mean, I'm not going to throw that out either. He's a very smart man, very capable man. He's created several very successful businesses that are really pushing the envelope when it comes to innovation. So it is interesting that he's chosen the Doge camp. Okay. But despite that, and despite how it's very comical and kind of a joke and all of that, he is putting serious effort into optimizing, to figuring out how to make the system better. If anyone tries to actually use Dogecoin for everyday payments today, they're going to get a big surprise when they look at the transaction fees and realize, oh, this actually isn't more scalable Bitcoin at all. This is actually horrendous for making everyday payments. So if Elon can figure out a way to optimize it, I don't know, maybe there's a solution in there. We'll have to see what he comes out with. But Will, I'll throw it to you.
I don't really know where to go with Elon's interview about Bitcoin. I saw a few clips about it. It was frustrating. It was wrong and weird. And that's all I want to say about it. Doge, I'm surprised. His commitment to Doge is tremendous, though. It is Times Man of the Year, but he's pretty busy. He's got a lot going on. He's making rocket engines. He's making electrical cars and all that stuff. I don't know if he has time to like focus on Bitcoin or Dogecoin.
Ooh,
ask anybody in the industry.
Cloned
like,
himself.
Maybe he has.
Maybe he figured out a Neuralink thing, created another Elon, and that's how he's running everything.
One thing we do need to note is he got that terrible haircut, and then they did the photo shoot after the haircut, which was interesting. And he like acknowledged it was a bad haircut, but he just went with it. So it's like, props to his confidence. I appreciate that. But Zach, take us away from this conversation. Let's get out of here.
Bad haircuts all around. Let's all get bad haircuts one day for the show. It'll be fun. All right. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about this. Her Instagram handle was Metaverse. Last month, it vanished. You got to love the 2-sentence headlines from the New York Times. Stick with us. We'll talk about that on the hash after the break. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Boom, 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 boom. Oh, wiggle, 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 wiggle.
Hello and welcome back to The Hash, where we make fun noises and dance on the break. Sometimes you get a little peek into that. All right, so we are heading off to the metaverse, where there is some drama on Instagram. So a New York Times article was released this morning and outlines the story of an Australian artist named Thea Mai Bowman, who had the handle Metaverse. And 5 days after Facebook became the Metaverse, that handle mysteriously disappeared. I think we can all make an assumption on what happened with that handle. The artist tried to find out what happened. She had this handle for a really long time. She's kind of chronicled her life and her business on this Instagram handle, and she received no answer. I do need to note, though, that after the New York Times contacted Instagram for comment on this article, the handle mysteriously reappeared, and they said that it was a mistake, and they have now reinstated it. So a lot to unpack here, I think, when it comes to trademarks, when it comes to centralized social media, but I've been babbling for quite a while. So I'm going to pass this off to you, Naomi. What did you take away from this article?
I mean, it's interesting because even though they said it was a mistake and they gave it back, this is not the first time something like this has happened. So actually a friend of mine had a Twitter handle from early days when you could still have 4-letter Twitter handles. And then a hacker in inverted commas, stole the identity, hacked into the account, got the identity. And so he tried to get this title back anyway, regain access, but he wasn't able to reclaim his 4-letter handle because a 4-letter government agency with the same initials had claimed it. Now, tell me that that's not completely suspect, that he gets hacked, this handle that just happens to have the same letters as his government agency gets taken, and then that government agency just ends up with this handle. So it is just a lesson in understanding how we don't really own these handles. We are renting them from these private businesses, and at their discretion, they can choose to, let us keep it or to, give it to someone else. And it's hard when we're building communities based on these and they've become intrinsic to our identity. I mean, this woman had chronicled her life, as you said. You don't want to be like building up a community and a reservoir of all of your work and then just have the rug pulled from underneath you. That's why there's such momentum around Web3 and finding ways to actually permanently own this. Like, for example, if you're on Library, you own your handle on Library. It's not a central database that is controlling that. It's whoever stakes the most just gets bumped up in search results for that handle. So it's like you have a lot more control than appeasing a bureaucracy that can or may not, that can just ignore your requests. I mean, I have impersonators on my Instagram all the time. There's one that's been there for a couple of weeks, and I haven't been able to get them taken down. That's a genuine impersonator who Instagram won't take down. And meanwhile, I will get like a handful, maybe half a dozen messages a day from followers saying, hey, is this you? We were talking about investment, but then, the conversation got cut off. What's the next step? And I'm like, stay away from the scammers. I'm never going to message you about, investment advice. This happens to people all across this crypto space. Scamming is rife, and it's interesting that it's so hard for them to take down those, but they take down the metaverse one like instantly. Like they got some priorities going there. But I'll throw this to back to you, Jen.
Yeah, I just wanted to, we talk so much on the show about the clunkiness of the legal system, and the article talked about the artist only being able to afford a lawyer who could review Instagram's terms and conditions and not really do anything past that. And totally unrelated, I have a friend who has an Instagram handle of a prominent company that we all know, and they asked me, like, what do you think I should do? They've built quite a following on it. And so I asked an IP lawyer, another friend, and his first question was, did this person have the handle before the company came around? And in this case, this artist has had the handle Metaverse for over 10 years, but she couldn't access the right legal resources to act on that. And it took her going to the New York Times and the New York Times contacting Instagram to get their side of the story for this to be reinstated. So you think about all of the creators who have built a life and a living on these platforms and who don't have access to legal resources, who can be deplatformed at the snap of a finger. But Zach, I will pass this off to you.
So many things. First of all, I really want to know what the company is. What does it rhyme with?
I can't tell you.
Oh, dang it. Okay.
I'll tell
really
you offline, off the record.
Yes.
You will have a good chuckle.
Cool. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. Second thing, not your keys, not your coin, bro. That's what this story is about. And I think it's really interesting that it kind of segues into like content moderation at the same time, right? Like, decentralization fixes this, but Naomi also illustrated a fantastic problem with decentralization, right? When there's no central middleman to either steal yo shit or block your impersonators, that comes with a set of trade-offs. Some of those are good, some of those are bad. And I think these stories are really interesting because it does kind of speak to that, right? Here is someone who, here's a central entity who just poached this thing that someone had been building value around for a number of years. On the flip side, it's also a central intermediary that could intervene should someone try to impersonate that person and profit off of their brand and their work. So it's just interesting thing about that stuff. And then third thing, journalism. Yeah. Public accountability and the ability to shame mega corporations into acting right. Go journalism. This is what inflicts positive change in the world. The embarrassment factor of being dunked on by the New York Times. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Let's change this thing.
True. The New York Times handle in your inbox will change your life pretty quickly, won't it? But we're moving on to another subject, are we not? It's time to talk about the Great Cannon, which is probably the best headline I've ever written and the best photo I ever got to pick for an article. I don't think we can show the photo because our CMS doesn't show it. Okay. I wish we could. Maybe we can't. I don't know. Anyways, it's a giant cannon because it's about the Great Cannon. Anyways, let's get to the subject here. So China has this great firewall. Most people know about it. Most people are familiar with the idea. It just basically blocks anyone from accessing certain websites if you're inside Chinese borders. They also have an offensive weapon called the Great Cannon, and they only roll it out on special occasions to take down websites that the Communist Party of China doesn't want anyone to have access to. So in the past, we've had Google being hit by the Great Cannon. We've had Amazon being hit by it. Basically, what this means is China redirects a ton of web traffic to one domain in order to shut it down. The analogy I used in this argument or in this piece was the Macy's Day Parade running down a small town city street and just clogging it up. You can't get to anything on the website at all. Now we're seeing that the Chinese government is using it against Ethereum mining pool Flexpool, means they're taking this pretty seriously. Back in June, they banned Bitcoin mining. They followed up with a bunch of legislation and actions against peer-to-peer transfers of crypto, against mining pools, basically anything having to do with crypto technology, they were going against aggressively. And now they are deploying this Great Cannon to try to shut down these websites because people are still trying to access them. Zach, I want to throw one up to you. It's fascinating to see like almost a Cold War 2.0 situation playing out with mining pools. Like that's not something I would have considered happening, but crypto is firmly between the US and China right now.
I just love this thing for learning about the Great Cannon. I was ignorant of the Great Cannon until yesterday. You hear about the Great Firewall of China, but it's cool to see the corollary thing in effect, the cannon, which sort of like enforces, like dictates in the web space from the Chinese authorities. So that to me was really interesting. And clearly, crypto has been in the crosshairs of Chinese authorities for a number of months now. Initially when some of these bans came out, people were saying, oh, same thing as before. I think we're clearly seeing that this is an escalation of some of the things that we had seen before, and that the resources that are being devoted to making sure that this mandate is enforced, it's quite interesting. And I thought this was a really revealing and interesting way to sort of, again, peel back the curtain and take a look at what's going on when it comes to enforcing these crypto bans in China. It's also crazy. I mean, I think it's also worth mentioning that like the Bitcoin hash rate is sort of back to where it was before Bitcoin mining was banned in China. So it's also crazy to see how this marketplace responds and evolves so quickly relative to the actions of these state actors. So all in all, good stuff. Great picture. Loved it. Really want to throw it to Naomi though for her takes on state actors messing with the flow of bits online.
Messing with the flow. It's interesting because they're talking about it in terms of like, oh, well, they kind of deny using these things. It's actually a very common malware, type of malware that infects your computer and turns different computers into minions that then creates a DDoS attack against someone. So if this stuff is technically feasible, it's obvious that governments are utilizing it. This stuff just doesn't exist, and then governments don't take advantage of it. And China is notorious in taking advantage of all of this stuff. And so it makes a lot of sense that they're using this to their advantage to stop people getting access to certain websites. If we're also looking at how Xi has really clamped down on messaging in China as well, on the narrative, on propaganda, this year has really been a consolidation year because he's looking to, extend his reign even further. And so controlling the narrative is so supremely important. And that means controlling access to what people can get to on the internet. It means blocking off websites that are not approved, blocking off any sort of narratives that is not completely created by the CCP. And so it makes a lot of sense that they're doing this and coming down harsher than ever, given that Xi really is focused on this consolidation of power. You can't consolidate power if people have rival narratives that are poking holes in your regime or undermining it in any way. So it's also interesting that mining is really at the forefront of what they consider threatening. If people have control of their own money, if they're finding a way to get money that is not sanctioned by the government and that money can easily flow across state borders, that's an incredibly powerful tool right there. And the CCP obviously recognizes that. The people of China obviously recognize that too. And that's why they're trying to continue with this mining operations, even though it has been banned in the country. A lot of places have just seen the writing on the wall a while ago, left the country, but there are still some small operations that are trying to make things work there and fly under the radar, but now the government's just turning their sights on them. We cannot have any holes in our sieve. And so it's, just very interesting that it is such a threat to China right now. It's sort of a testament to the power of cryptocurrency. But I'll throw it to you, Jen, for your take.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in a quick tidbit before we wrap up. This was also the first time that I heard about the Grand Canyon. And I think it's so important when we talk about what's happening
The Great Canyon.
Oh,
Jen,
sorry, the Great Canyon. See, I just heard about it. I'm
great.
already messing up the name.
Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is kind of cool.
Yeah, right? Okay, well, anyways.
Canyon.
That's what America would have.
Yeah, they would have the Grand Canyon.
So Trump would do the Grand Canyon.
We probably do have the Grand Canyon. We probably have a secret Grand Canyon somewhere. I mean, I'm sure.
Obviously, we do.
Obviously, it's grand.
Okay, sorry, Jen, interrupt you.
No, it's okay. I just think it's so important when we're talking about what happens in China. So we, not us, but I think we often talk about what's happening in China as it's happening over there and it's never going to happen over here. But it's so important for us to talk about, these attacks and what the government is doing, because it wouldn't take much for these things to happen in our own backyard. So I think it's important to be aware of that. But Zach, take us home.
Take you home. And in Canada, they have the polite canon and the gentle canon.
Yes.
The apology
Sorry to use our canon.
They just fire apologies at you. Like, sorry.
We're sorry.
It's so nice. We love you guys out there. All right. That was it. That was it for the show today. We're gonna be singing to you 5 days out of 7 during the breaks. It's a special Easter egg for diehard viewers. When the mics are on, that's when the jams come out. So stick with us for that tomorrow and more. Also, we'll get you up to speed on crypto news, tell you what to look out for, and how to sound smart. It's the hash. It's what we do. All right. I'm Zach. That's Will. Naomi's here. And Jen's here. We wish you a happy Tuesday, and we hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye.
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 See ya.